would start with the disclaimer that whatever, while I would critique these definitions, I would also I would mention that many people still believe in these specific definitions and have their research trajectories in this specific sub aspects of AI, right. So, these are all good definitions, but from the philosophy point of view, one definition is now starting to win a little bit more, and we will talk about that, right. So, let us talk about thinking humanly first, right. This had very few takers. It is also simpler to critique, because if you ask Gary Kasparov, how do you think, he would not be able to explain that to you, right. Thinking is an innate process to us. It comes naturally. It is very hard for us to vocalize it, put it down in words. So, it is very hard to understand how humans think. More often than not, humans do what is called post facto rationalization, post hoc rationalization. Like, I believe that we just take decisions intuitively, often emotionally, and then somebody says, why did you do this? And then we just cook up reasons. And if we had done something else and somebody had asked, why did you do that, they would have still cooked up some reasons, because often in life every choice has some pros and some cons, but usually we are not doing a cost benefit analysis. Usually when we have a decision in front of us, we do not write, okay, this is the benefit of this, this is the drawback of this. I do not want to go to, I want to, if I go into medicine, then I will be helping people. If I go into engineering, I will be making a lot of money. If I go into medicine, I will be on call for 1.5 days at a stretch. If I go into engineering, I can be working from my bed, especially computer engineering, right. If I this, right. So, then you say, okay, for me, making a difference to lives of people is more important, so I will go to medicine, or luxury and money is more important, so I will go to engineering. So, okay, this is a caricature, please do not take me seriously, right. Of course, all walks of life are extremely important, but this is how we make decisions, right. This is how we do not make decisions, sorry. More often than not, we do not do a cost benefit analysis, and even if we do a cost benefit analysis, which is maybe a very fraction of percentages of us, how do we say that making money is worth 10 points and making a difference to people is worth 5 points and luxury is right? We do not know what is the value of each of these things. It is an innate process of one thing feels more important to us, one thing feels less important to us. So, eventually we do not make decisions like this. We make decisions by just intuitively feeling like, oh, I will go to engineering because I love games and I will get to play more games because I will be on the computer all the time, or something like that. I will go to engineering because all my family is a set of doctors and I do not want to become like them, come on. Things like that, right. We make decisions very intuitively and emotionally, and then we sort of justify it to people. We do not want the AI systems to do that, of course, right. And moreover, we already discussed that humans are not always intelligent. We commit suicides, we jump off the cliffs. If you start looking at these various type of crazy videos where people are just by definition doing crazy things, we realize the whole average intelligence of mankind may not be very high, and we do not want to really take AI systems and put it there, right. We do not want to have AI systems having breakups and crying through the night and then not functioning in the morning and so on and so forth, right. So, let humans do that kind of job. Moreover, even from the philosophy of the field, it is not important how Deep Blue thinks. It is important that, or how Gary Kasparov thinks. It is important that Deep Blue defeats Gary Kasparov. See, that is the demonstration. Whether you defeat Gary Kasparov by thinking like Gary Kasparov or thinking in your own way, it is all kosher. See, moreover, and you will see this again and again and again, humans have some hardware. Actually, you can think of humans as intelligent beings, and we have our own hardware. We have a hardware of the brain, and in this hardware of the brain, we have some neuron connections, and we have some specific electrical signals that are going in, that are placed in a certain way in the brain and have been trained in a certain way as we were going and through our genes. The machine has not had the exact same training process. The machine is a different machine. We may have a supercomputer where the neurons or the processors are arranged in a different way. We can get an approximation of the brain in the machine, but we do not really know exactly how a brain is structured. We only have an approximate idea, etc., etc. So, because our hardware is different, it is very hard for us to claim that we can build a machine that can think like humans, right. And in fact, it may not lead to success. We have massive parallelism, the machines do not have that much massive parallelism in general, etc., etc. And of course, we have big quantum computers, things change, but for now that is the case. So, therefore, AI said, look, thinking like humans is a reasonable endeavor. You can spend a lot of your energy in thinking about doing psychology experiments or behavioral experiments and taking insights from there, and AI can use it. We do not mind using it. You can do a lot of work on understanding brain and how its connections are set up. Great, do all that work. We can take it eventually if they succeed. These are all worthy endeavors, and especially the field of cognitive science actually studies how people behave and builds models for how people act, or think. But eventually, for AI, that is not the definition, right. Intelligence is more than humans, and thinking is not sufficient, right, and thinking like humans and replicating all their behavior is not ideal. I should point out that thinking like humans can be important in some applications. For example, if I am building an intelligent tutoring application, then understanding how humans think and how they learn is extremely important to give the right advice. Or if I want to have like an elderly care robot, which is going around and in an elderly care home, helping the elderly people take medicines on time, be their buddy and so on and so forth, then you need an AI system which can understand old people's emotions, which can also, express emotional intelligence, and therefore understanding human behavior will continue to be important in various applications, but is not necessarily the definition of AI. Now, let us come to thinking rationally, which is a really good definition in my opinion, right. And it comes from the old thousands of years of history of what is the basis of a correct argument or a thought process, right. And all this endeavor started way back with Aristotle and earlier, where they created this whole logical framework. So, what is the right reason, what is the right reasoning, or what arguments can be proven in a given context, and so on and so forth, right. A lot of people believe this is a good definition of AI, more than you would believe, right. And a lot of people spend their life's work on studying logic and improving logic, and it is a good idea, right, except that there are two problems which are commonly suggested. One is that not all intelligent behavior is mediated by a logical deliberation. So, as a simple example, suppose I by mistake touch a hot stove, right. What do I do? In a reflex, I get my hand out, right, quickly, right. I do not want to be burned. Would you call this intelligent behavior? In the given context, getting my hand back from a hot stove would be considered intelligent behavior, right. Now, how did I decide this? It is actually really important to think about this. I did not do a logical deliberation, I took a reflex action. But if I had done logical deliberation, it would have gone something like this. Oh, I have just touched the stove. The stove is extremely hot. If I keep touching it, slowly my skin is going to burn, and that will be very hard for me to grade your papers. Therefore, in order for me to allow myself to grade your papers, I should remove my hand from the stove. By then it will be too late, right. The process of deliberation is quite accurate, quite appropriate, but the fact that we may not have time to do the deliberation, or a deliberation may not be needed in this case, is actually quite important. If we just remember the rule, when touch a hot stove or when touch something hot, remove your hand, is going to do the work and will exhibit intelligent behavior, right. Therefore, it was felt that while logical deliberation is a cornerstone, an important process for most intelligent behaviors that we show, it is not for all. There are some which may simply be reflexive, which may not need deliberation. A similar example holds when we see a big truck coming in and we are in the middle of the road and it is coming fast, right, we just quickly run away. Believe it or not, this kind of reflexive behavior is extremely important in robotics. Can you think of one place where something like reflexive should be extremely should be used? One behavior, one specific example of a behavior in robotics. So, suppose you have a robot moving on the floor. There is one place specifically where the robot is asked, don't think, just act quickly. Can you guess? If someone comes in front, what do? Stop or go back a little bit, so that you avoid the obstacle. This is called obstacle avoidance. What is your name? Kishore. So, Kishore says obstacle avoidance is one such thing where we need not be deliberating very much. If the machine feels it is going to collide with something or it has collided with something, quickly go back. That is a behavior that is very reflexive, that is a behavior which is part of most robotic systems, and that is the behavior which we will consider intelligent in the process, but it is not necessarily deliberative. There is one other point here which you will also agree hopefully. So, I will explain this with a joke. This joke is not due to me, it is one of the top few jokes a few years ago, and I borrowed it from another professor, but it is a nice joke, makes the point. So, Holmes and Watson, Sherlock Holmes, and if you know the joke, please do not ruin it for everybody else. So, Sherlock Holmes and Watson go camping. They set up their camp, and in the night, it is a beautiful night, they sleep, right. And then suddenly Holmes wakes up Watson, and Watson wakes up from sleep, and Holmes says, Watson, look up, what do you see? Watson says, oh, I see starlit sky. Holmes says, so what does that tell you? Watson says, oh, there are stars, which tells me that there is a huge galaxy, there are many galaxies, and there is a moon which tells me that the sun gets the lights get reflected and we can see light even in the night, and it also tells me that I am very insignificant, it is part of a bigger we are part of a huge galaxy, this, that and the other. He keeps on going and making all these scientific assertions, and Holmes says, Sherlock says, yeah, Watson, you fool, it tells us that somebody has stolen our our tent. That is why we are able to look up and see the sky, right. So, now it is a joke, of course, but the question that this particular joke raises is, was Watson being incorrect? No, he was making all conclusions based on the observations and so on. In terms of logic, he was accurate. But at that point in time, you and I would agree that making the assertion that somebody has stolen our tent is more important than making the assertion that there are so many stars in the sky and there is galaxy and so on and so forth. Right? And so, begs the question, is there a purpose to thinking? I remember, I had a collaborator, one of the sharpest minds I have ever seen. If you ask him one line question, he will send 3-page response. If you ask him to make progress in research, not so much. He will deliberate a lot, he will think a lot, and then he will think about his problem, and then somebody else will ask him a question, he will think about their problem, and somebody else will ask him a question, he will think about their problem. He will give them a lot of insights, but will never be focused enough to think about his problem and make progress. He was one of the sharpest minds, but could not remain goal directed. It was very hard to get him to finish his PhD. So, you often ask, should the fact that I can think, is that sufficient for intelligence, or should I be focusing my thinking in a certain direction? Should it be purposeful? And more the AI researchers feel that thinking should be purposeful, it should be directed towards a goal. Okay? And thinking rationally does not naturally express it, although in some ways it could later. Last but not the least, we have acting humanly. In acting humanly, the idea is let us mimic human behavior, and obviously I think the main argument against it is that humans should not be your ending point for intelligence. Right? It could be a temporary milestone in the middle, intermediate milestone, but once you have achieved that milestone, we should keep going forward, right. And now there is a funny story about the Turing test, which was mentioned by Ansh. So, a Turing test is now operationalized in this Loebner Prize, which is an event which happens every year in Boston, where the Turing test is specifically run, where people present their softwares and humans are brought and judges are brought, and the judge asks questions from the screen and the human or the machine responds, and the goal is that someday a machine will be able to defeat a human, defeat the judge or confuse the judge in making them believe that they are not a machine, and the Loebner Prize would be won. It is a I think $100,000 prize or something. And they have specific verticals, like they will do something on a specific kind of dialogue system or a specific kind of theme and so on and so forth. So, these are expertise dependent tests. So, very interesting things happened. So, first of all, once there was a Shakespeare theme, and so these judges asked questions about Shakespeare and the machine and the human were supposed to respond. And now they were able to bring in one particular human who knew everything about Shakespeare, knew every little detail and all the trivia and random stuff about Shakespeare, all his novels, all his work. And so, whatever question this expert would ask, this judge would ask, the human would be able to respond to all of it. So, the judges thought that there cannot be any human who would remember so much thing about Shakespeare, this thing has to be a machine. So, the machine did not defeat human, the machine did not succeed in winning Turing test, the human failed in the Turing test. The human made people believe that it's a machine, he is a machine because he remembered all the details which we thought could not be a machine. Now, is that the right demonstration that we are looking for? It is said that if you really want to win Turing test, make spelling mistakes, because humans make a lot of spelling mistakes. If you never make a spelling mistake, judges will feel that, oh, you must be a machine, you are not making any spelling mistakes whatsoever. We do not want to build systems that make human like error just so that we can win Turing test. That should not be the demonstration of AI, right. And there are, so it is a slippery slope, right. It says it is very difficult to reproduce with the specific experts and with the specific humans a machine may win, with another specific experts or humans it may not. It is not a constructive test, it is not a mathematically analyzable test. This kind of an evaluation is good for news stories, but it is not necessarily good for making progress in the field, right. And therefore, it has been over time agreed upon by more people that an appropriate definition is to act rationally, right. Now, when we say act rationally, well, it need not be deliberative, you need not have a logical process at the end, you may have a reflexive process, you may have any process that leads to the right action, we are okay with that. It also is comfortable with this idea that every art, every inquiry and similarly every action should be in pursuit of something good, and that you will see we will get to when we define what is rationality, right. So, now there is one problem, however, with this definition, and the problem is we have said that AI is nothing but acting rationally, but now we have a problem. What is the problem? What is acting rationally? What is rationally? What is rational? What is the definition of rationality? Right? We have not solved that particular problem yet. Right? Before I go there, and so next few minutes will be spent on defining what is rationality, I would say that there is also one particular important question where there are two sides within AI. One is called the weak AI hypothesis and one is called the strong AI hypothesis. The weak AI hypothesis says that machines may not have a good thinking procedure, but they can still act intelligently. It is saying that you can build AI systems which internally are not doing the right logical processes, not having the right reasons for the right action, but they can still exhibit the right behavior. Whereas strong hypothesis says that machines, in order to act intelligent, have to think intelligently too. So, in other words, thinking rationally is a sub part of acting rationally. Now, people disagree on what is the right answer here. Here is a very famous Chinese room example. This happens in the context of language, but I think it makes the point still. Suppose I want to convert English to Chinese, and now we can say that if I am able to translate from English to Chinese, I will be able to claim that I know both languages. However, there is a room, and inside the room there is a big fat book, okay, a huge book, where somebody has enumerated all possible sentences in English, let us say up to a very large length, okay, which is unknown to the expert. And for that somebody has already written down all the Chinese translations, and then some third person has access to this book. So, whenever a query comes, this is my English sentence translated, the human goes in, opens the page which has that particular sentence, looks at the Chinese, just copies the characters and sends it out. Would you say that such a human which is reading from the book knows both English and Chinese? We would not say that. But would it be able to fool someone in believing that he knows both English and Chinese, he or she? Yes, right. So, this is sort of like the weak AI hypothesis, right. So, it is saying that you can have a system which can act intelligently without thinking intelligently, without knowing the thing that is necessary for the intelligence, specifically if you have a large set of rules which somebody wrote for you. So, I remember I said that 40% of AI startups do not really have AI in it. A lot of people think of AI as follows: somebody, a domain expert, looks at some data, looks at past behavior, write down rules. Rules could be, if your income, if you have transactions greater than 1 lakh rupees, you should file a tax return, and if you do not file tax return, you will be in you will be found guilty, and a question will be raised. Or if you have home in Greater Kailash, then you should file tax return, or whatever. So, they just write these rules, right, and then they say it is an intelligent system. It can automatically predict which people might be doing tax fraud. Would you and I say these handwritten rules to be an AI system? This is equal to this Chinese book example, Chinese room example, right? We would not, right? And a lot of people who claim they are doing AI startups are actually writing these kinds of rules at the back end. Then you can start to put in some intelligence one step at a time. You can say, I do not know whether 1 lakh should be the threshold, or 10 lakh should be the threshold, or 1 crore should be the threshold. So, let me have the AI system figure it out. I do not know whether Greater Kailash is the right thing, or GK2, GK1 we should differentiate, or what. Let me have the AI system figure it out. And if the AI system automatically figures out the parameters or the values that lead us to this particular intelligence, then we can start to say that there is some automated intelligence that is coming out, right. And so, then that is where they start becoming AI systems. So, anyway, so the point is that people disagree on whether acting rationally is the right definition also or not, because they say that you can act rationally without really thinking intelligently, and that is not great, but we have to come up with some definition. So, we come up with the acting rationally definition. So, now I am out of time, but what I am going to do in the next class, and that will be 15-20 minutes of the next class, is that I will talk about agents and what is rationality, and that would sum up the definition of AI for us, and then we will start talking about our first algorithm, first computational model. So, real technical work starts in the next class. Thank you. you.